the music, the countdown. That means only one thing. The Star Wars Newsnet Live is back for another edition. And guys, I told you a few seconds ago. I said that it's only like a week and a half here into the new year. But could it be possible that we are on track? You know, every goal has, metrics to meet, each quarter, like you try to measure each week. Could we be on track to Star Wars meeting one of our resolutions of doing better, of marketing our stuff, talking about our stuff, getting ahead of things this year and putting it out there? I mean, in just a week and a half, guys, we have a leak about a Mando movie that happened a few weeks ago that no one really said anything about. There was a lot of confusion. And then Star Wars comes out and says, hey, Mandalorian and Grogu, it's happening. What's up? And then in that same thing, they're like, yeah, Ahsoka Season 2 in development. There you go. It's happening. Here's a little fun sketch, which I love, by the way. And then it's just Young Jedi Adventures, sure. But still, we got the date that the rest of the season's coming out. There's a trailer. We have things to talk about. And like I told you before, we were joking around about this. Like I'm sure, like you guys said, this all means that Lucasfilm's now going to take 3 months off and say, you know what? Great job, everybody. Good quarter. But guys, I'm sorry. I'm going to be optimistic tonight. We're on track towards meeting our goal because there is a movie that we get to talk about tonight. Mandalorian and Grogu, directed by Jon Favreau. Here we go. Ahsoka Season 2 in development. Lots to discuss. Brian, welcome to the stage. How's it going? You, sir?
I'm here. I've had a weird day, but made it. Like I even dropped the ball on getting the thumbnail to you guys and everything for this. Like I feel off. But I've only got one more work day and then I get like a full week off for vacation. So
sick.
Just got to get through tomorrow. That's all I got to do.
Power through tomorrow.
Yes.
What better to power through tomorrow than talking about Star Wars movie news, depending on our reactions. But Jay, how are we doing? What are the vibes?
I'm doing great, dude. It's starting to get chilly around the world, including even here in Hawaii. So, it's not like negative degrees or anything. It's in the 60s, which is kind of really low for us. So I'm really chill. I'm really cool, vibing, and I'm happy to be here talking about Star Wars.
Speaking of like low weather, so I'm here in Orlando, right? And I go to basketball practice this morning. We're having tryouts, and some of these girls are complaining about how cold it is outside this morning. And it's 48 degrees, 45 degrees. And I told them, I said, I don't want to hear this like nonsense about the cold. How many of you have lived in Orlando your whole life? Most of them residents. Like, ridiculous. When I was in school near Indianapolis and I had to walk to Spanish class at 8 a.m. when it's snowing and 5 degrees outside, that was legitimate cold. And this is
your grandkids are going to love you.
This was a joy. They started laughing because I was like, this was a joy to walk out of my house in shorts in January. But all right, Brian, I'm going to throw this to you first because I know that of everyone we circulate here on the show, I would say out of everyone, you are probably typically the most positive and at least looking forward to the different Mandoverse, for lack of a better word, projects. Mm-hmm. I know that the Filoni movie is like your number one movie you're looking forward to. Everything in this era seems to be kind of up your alley for the most part. So I want to throw it to you. Not your reaction today, this moment, but just the initial gut thought, like the first gut reaction when you saw the movie news. What was like for you?
My first thought was, hell yes. Didn't see that coming. Like I knew we heard rumors about season 4 turning into a movie and everything like that, which I think now they said they're still doing season 4 also. But I was like, Brian was right. What did I say? Oh, some random Tuesday night. Yeah, no. I was excited. I was really excited. And then my very next thought was, and I might piss some people off saying this, and I might be dead wrong, but this is just how I felt right off the bat, was this feels like Damage Control. Like announcing that just out of the blue like that. with, like, I think we talked last week, and we don't really focus on it, but with the stuff going on with the director for the Rey film and everything like that, and a little bit of the backlash that it's following some of her comments. I feel like
comments that are like 8 years old, by the way.
Yeah, right. And so I feel like this is them like, oh crap, everybody's all pissed off now. Let's give them something we know they're gonna like. And I think this has been in development for a while, but to just drop it randomly like that, like out of nowhere, like I didn't even know anything about it. Kirsty actually texted me the story. Like I'm sitting at work and I get a text that's an IGN link and I'm like, wait, what? What's going on? And I'm like, what? And I'm like, fuck yeah. So I know I'm excited for it. I think it makes sense. I think the slate that they're doing, the order they're going to do everything in now is starting to make a lot more sense, and kind of the timing is making more sense with everything now, especially with Ahsoka season 2 being announced alongside everything. I think putting that extra movie in there and kind of not necessarily bumping everything else back, but I guess they kind of did bump everything else back a slot. I think it gave Dave Filoni a little bit more breathing room to do an Ahsoka season 2 to lead into his movie.
Right. I 100% agree with a lot of like the timeline stuff and things that you're talking about. I don't know as much damage control. My initial reaction was pure excitement just because of movie news. And I'm really excited about anything that has to do with a Star Wars feature film, Star Wars movie, even if it's this, I guess for lack of a better word, just kind of almost soft launch maybe of a movie. Because this is probably going to be the first one maybe that comes out, that May 26th one.
I think it is.
So probably. And so I think that it wasn't like a weak move, but I think it was almost seemed like from a point of weakness, like crap, it's almost by the time May 26th comes around, it's going to be 8 years since we launched a Star Wars movie. We have all of these things that we haven't done right. Maybe we got to go into production
this year.
Let's just got to do this, something we know we can get done quickly. We already have these people in house. Like Favreau is already working on Mandalorian projects. We can get this out, something that we know will generate some money because everyone loves Mando and Grogu. You slap those two on a poster, you keep the budget reasonable, and you're gonna profit from that. So I think it's fine. I we'll talk more about that in a minute, but let's throw something to Jay. Now, Jay, I have a very different question for you that's also geared more, like I think, up your alley specifically as well. So, Jay, is Grogu in any danger over the next 2 years of being of threats of like killing, cutting from Star Wars, trying to sever his cute little head from the rest of his body? You've been known to, in the past, to want to just off beloved Star Wars characters. So is Grogu in any danger now that he's hitting the big screen?
I hope so. I'm kidding. Don't worry.
Jesus
don't worry. No, he's not.
I don't know you anymore, Jay. You're breaking my heart. I'm going down a path I can't follow.
Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth J, the Terror?
Yeah. I'm just literally just carving paths in the Star Wars Newsnet team, just like throwing up this entire company up in flames.
You get a pipe bomb, and you get a pipe bomb.
We can't see the other side. Like behind Jay's carrying the other side is like a list of like just a board of characters.
Yeah.
It's a big S on it.
He's got the book for Death Note.
He's got his list. He's like Oliver Queen in season 1 of Arrow with his list. Like, you have failed this franchise. Like, he's going through. I could cross them off.
Jesus.
But what was your, on serious though, Jake, like your initial gut reaction, like first thing you thought of when you saw the news?
Well, when I saw the news, I thought, well, like all of you guys, I was definitely excited because, hey, more movies is great. And I kind of had that feeling even when watching The Mandalorian season 3, which was like, man, I wish I could just see this in an IMAX theater. I love watching, the shows Ahsoka and Tales of the Jedi in front of my TV. It's a nice big screen, but it doesn't substitute a big IMAX theater with other fans and, going to like an event with popcorn. So that was like my initial reaction. I was like, oh, great. I get to see like this in theater. My second thought was kind of like, this is kind of like what we were kind of expecting. Like you guys mentioned, it had already leaked that a Mandalorian movie was in the works, or that the Mandalorian season 4 was being converted into a movie.
Right.
So I was like, oh, this is kind of following on what we were expecting. So like you guys, I was very much so excited. And then afterwards, like when I was really thinking about it, I was like, oh, this is kind of what we were expecting, and this feels a little bit safe. And like you said, Brian, too, we were discussing it in our Discord chat among the company, where it's like this feels like a little bit of damage control, following what the Ray movie director was saying in their comments, and how that got really picked up and torn apart, like in news media. I mean, and even with how they announced it too, like Manslayer was saying, and what you were saying too, Brian, it just kind of dropped in the middle of a random Tuesday, like in the middle of a workday, and then there wasn't much fanfare around it. So
what's wrong with that, though? I mean, it's not like they dropped a trailer or a teaser.
Right.
I would say that there is something like pretty special, I think, not doing this all the time, like, having these projects. If you have something in the can, like, just put it out there, let word of mouth, people kind of go about their day, they see it, oh my gosh, did you just see this happen, versus always building it up to like this specific time, especially because Star Wars is not known for dropping content just out there, like, or information out there. They're so tight-lipped. To just have them on a random, Tuesday afternoon, be like, hey, movie, check it out. Like, to me, this is something that's never happened before. Like, it's generally, this has never happened. So it was almost a milestone, damage control or not. It was almost like a milestone event.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was like a bad decision. It was just unexpected. Yeah, and like you said, this isn't something this is something we rarely see from Lucasfilm. Obviously, like when they make these big announcements, there's a lot of fanfare behind it. And so that's why I was a little bit taken back and just surprised as well.
Yeah.
A lot of the criticism, and I want to throw this to Brian, that I'm hearing is that online, and then maybe even a little from you guys, is that it's just safe, and it's just it was expected. I'm sorry though, like when I hear these leaks of Mandalorian is going to be turned into a movie, oh, it's going to be season 4 is still happening though. I hear those leaks. I've heard so many leaks over the last years, and most of them end up not happening or just get thrown down. So when I saw that, I'm like, okay, maybe, but until I see names attached and like Star Wars itself telling me it's going to go into production, like at a time, and give me a timeline for that, I just kind of throw it away or put it somewhere else. So for them to actually say that this is happening and then attach Favreau's name to he's going to be directing it, it's going into production. They said in 2024. So they've clearly thought about this for a while. If this is going into production this year, to me, this is less about playing it safe and more banking on characters. I mean, sure, like I said, they know there's a profit margin for this because it's Mando and Grogu, but it also speaks to the level of importance, and I think that Grogu and Mando have to the franchise, that they're willing to take a show that's only been on a streaming service and say, we're going to put feature film money into this to put it in theaters everywhere, that they think that they're that big and they're that profitable for the franchise. So Brian, I guess I want to throw that to you, is just, where do you think this is more of a just safe move? Like, what's the line between safe and like a little bit risky to put, this movie out there? Because a lot of people, I think, would say it's safe, but what if this movie goes out there and because it's a streaming service movie, people are like, well, I don't want to watch 4 seasons of a show in order to do that.
Just to figure out what the movie's
understand like what this movie's going to be about.
I think here's what I think happened, and I have nothing to back this up, nothing except for how a lot of us feel about season 3. It might kind of back this up. It was what, a year ago, Jon Favreau said that he was working on season 4 of Mando. He was busy writing it. I'm wondering if he didn't write a story for season 4, because season 3 kind of ended a little more. It wasn't like the final bit of the story, but it had a strong finality to it.
It could have been if they wanted it to.
Right. And so I feel like he started to write season 4, and I think he wrote, 8 episodes. And I think he started going through it and realized that maybe a few of the episodes, not a whole lot really happened, and not a lot of them need anything. And so he took it all out. And by the time he did, it was, 2.5 hours. And he was, why don't we just make a movie out of this? And like Jay said, it's the safe choice. He probably went and was like, hey, look, I've got 2.5 hours worth of Star Wars story here with characters that we know are successful, with a time period that we know is successful. And Jon Favreau is an amazing director as it is. Let's put out another film. You've already got this flag here, this flag here, this flag here for release dates. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to roll. I've got everything written out. I'm ready to roll. So I'm wondering if they weren't like, let's do it. Let's just, because we've talked about it on the show before, and you said it earlier. It's been, by the time this movie comes out, it'll have been 6-7 years since a Star Wars movie came out. And to me, that's embarrassing. That is an embarrassing thing for Lucasfilm to say. And granted, they have a bunch of series out too, but to say, hey, we own Star Wars, but we haven't done a movie in 7 years. Like, to me, that's embarrassing. So going with something that they can drop in the barrel and just shotgun into production and know that it's going to end up most likely doing well. I think that's the chain of events. I see that as what, in my mind's eye, I think that's what happened. I think Lucasfilm's going with the safe choice. I think
I agree with you that Favreau directing is exciting because he's a good director. He is. I have my issues with him as like the writer, but I mean, I think he's directed like a handful, one episode of the show, like only like 1 or 2. And like, I think it was season 2, episode 1, the Cobb Bandit. That's one of the best episodes in the whole series. So his movie list, I'm fine with Jon Favreau. I just am wondering who is going to be in the writer's room for this movie.
Right.
I think that will actually determine my excitement level for this, because if this is going to end up being, I just can't imagine him writing this while he's directing this. Like, something has to be in there as well. And if I find out he's really heavy involved in the writing and the script, like, I will be a little bit turned off, I'll admit, because I think that him and Filoni both benefit from having a writer's room. We've talked about that before. I would argue that this is, going to be like absolutely safe. But Jay, I want to get your opinion on this. Favreau directing, I want to get your opinion on this because Brian brings up a good point. Was this something that Favreau was pushing, or was this something that Lucasfilm and Disney brass said, hey, you need to get this movie out here and we need something. Hey, just turn Mando into a movie now. I think it was more of that. I think that he was planning season 4 and he's just been planning these episodic series. And they said, we need a Star Wars film, like pronto. We've dropped the ball on that because it's been 7 years. It'll be 7 years before our movie comes out. We need it right now. Jay, which one do you think it was?
I'm actually of your thinking, Tyler, and of your philosophy, which is that I think that this actually was a streaming show. This was going to be on Disney Plus. But like you said, Tyler, I think that Disney has been shifting much farther away from pushing Disney Plus and streaming shows. Like their push now is towards movies. And I think that they're saying now that most people are starting to get tired of streaming services and just having these ongoing shows that maybe feel like they're just going on forever. Because when I first saw, going back to the earlier question, what was my gut reaction? That was actually another thought I had, which was that, Disney is starting to move away from making Disney Plus shows now. Right. We don't have any actual concrete evidence that proves this idea, but we have also heard from Bob Iger that, even that he wants to pare down and slow and not make as much content for these big franchises going forward. And I think that, I think even just making this a streaming show, I think that actually would have been the safe move. And I think there is actually some risk in saying hey, no, we're going to put out a movie that has a lot of prior history attached to it, and we're going to put it out and make it available for bit larger audiences, I think there is some risk to it.
There's plenty of track record of that being successful too. I think the easiest one to go to, and correct me if I'm wrong, because there may be examples I'm forgetting of, is the Star Trek universe has done that with numerous times.
Sure.
They made like 4, 5 movies from the original series and adapted that into several films, like Star Trek: The Next Generation from the 80s. They adapted like 4 films from that, another spin-off show, and they are rumored to have a script going for, Captain Picard as well for a new film possibly as well. So it can happen too. Let's jump into. There's 2 comments here I want to address. It says, I think it's a safe and good move. This is from Manslayer. Favreau directs. Grogu is worldwide famous. If it's good and fun, it will create goodwill, interest with general audiences. Normies, next movies will start with the right foot. There is something to be said about the worldwide fame of Grogu. I will say, so I have, I teach in middle school, and we do a little review game before every unit is over. We had one this week. And as a fun thing, I always do a fun question at the end. This week it was name 10. You have like 60 seconds. You need to name 10 characters on your whiteboard, Star Wars characters, but no villains, because everyone knows Darth Vader and stuff like that. Almost always the first or second character that people bring up are Baby Yoda and the Mandalorian. Like every single one of my kids knows who those 2 characters are. And when this film comes out, every single kid, every single middle schooler, they'll be in high school at this point. The elementary kids now that are going to middle school, they're going to go to see this with their parents. Like I just feel like that's like a guaranteed thing, and so that alone, I think, will eventize this movie to pay off. So I did want
to. Wait. So did they write him out as Baby Yoda or Grogu? Because that's the other thing. Like
most of them don't know it's Grogu, but
yeah,
I don't think that's much of an issue, because if they'll see the title of the movie and they'll see him on the poster,
right?
Like those posters will be out there, and they'll just make the connection. Like most of them have no idea his name is Grogu; it's just Baby Yoda,
right?
And then, guys, if it'll be May 4th in Disney Orlando. So they have a May slot scheduled for 2026, but it's like the end of May. I think it's like the 26th.
Is it the 20? Like summer.
Yeah, it's something like, it's going to be like the end of May. I'd imagine that could be like a Memorial Day weekend type, movie or something like that. I would imagine when it comes out, like probably.
Yeah, you're looking at probably the 28th or the 29th.
So I would imagine probably like that 3-day weekend, like launch
Memorial Day, yeah.
Big movie weekend. See if you can do it around then. I don't think Marvel has any slots right now scheduled in for that time. I could be wrong on that. I'd have to look again, but there's definitely some stuff here to talk about. So we're at about the 23-minute mark. I want to talk about this a little more. I have a couple things to throw your way, and then we can transition to some Ahsoka content. I guess my first question would be, looks like season 4 will come first. We'll have season 4 that will lead into this movie. So I'm guessing, season 4 will, come out next year, and then the movie will be the year after that. That would be my initial guess. Season 4, I saw something online, and I've seen rumors that it's going to be only like 5 or 6 episodes. Obviously, those are just rumors at this point. We have no idea. But an abbreviated season probably makes a little bit of sense, even though I would argue that we've had a lot of abbreviated seasons of The Mandalorian. But it makes sense for the show. What are your guys' thoughts on what needs to happen in season 4 to set up like a movie? Because Brian brought up the point of season 3 kind of left us with this clean slate of a film of the show. And they could easily turn a film from what happened in season 3. Like if you have just a story, it's like a fresh start. But now things are going to take place in this new season that are going to set up this movie. And I think we're all in agreement that there can't be too much that happens in this. Yes, it's Bird Gideon. My clones
shows up on Navarro.
There can't be too many things that happen in this movie that also intersect with what's going to be going on in the Ahsoka show and the like grander universe. I think it needs to be its own entity. Yeah. So what does that look like? And I'll throw it to you, Brian. What does that look like in season 4? We're projecting a little bit ways out here, but what are some like checkpoints season 4 needs to hit to set up this movie?
You can't do the whole Grogu gets kidnapped thing again. You can't do that again because repeat. You're just on repeat.
Are you saying that it can't end in like him being kidnapped and that
Well,
sets up
no,
the
I mean,
movie,
like,
or
that
is it
can't
just
be,
he
like, the
can't be
catalyst.
kidnapped at all in the
Yeah,
the
no, he's
show?
got to be
Like,
safe with Mando, and I mean, we already saw Mando, burn the world down to get back to Grogu after he got taken once, and it's not really something you necessarily want to see again. What I would like to see though is Mando really hinted a lot at the uh, cloning kind of subplot. They were talking a lot about the cloning facility on Mount Tantus
Mhm.
and everything like that. I mean, there were some nuggets in there get dropped about it. Obviously, everything with Gideon and all of his clones. Obviously, they've perfected clones, right? Because they had all these clones of Gideon that supposedly were Force users, right?
Right.
That's what they said. We never got to see it, but supposedly that's what it was. I want to see some more. I want to see something really heavy on the cloning because they talked about it in was it Mando? Was it this third season of Mando that did the whole it was like the weird spin-off episode on Coruscant with the doctor and talking about cloning and how important it was and everything like that.
Dr. Pershing.
And then we saw Mount Tantus in Bad Batch season 3, which that could set something up for later on also. And so I think whatever it is, it's got to be heavy around the cloning, and then burnt Gideon will probably, baby back Gideon will probably be coming back in the movie, all burnt off. Maybe he'll actually have his mustache this time. Maybe it'll be the real Gideon, not a clone. Like everybody's saying.
You're right. I'm with you. I think that they definitely need to stay away from some of the main things that they've happened before. Like the story, there can't be like a 4-episode arc in a season.
Bring back the Razor
Grogu,
Crest.
Getting pursued and captured.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the movie not being super connected to the 4th season of the show.
Yeah.
Like let season 4 maybe just be like each episode is its own little story,
like
and it has to do like they're doing little missions for the New Republic. Like there's this Imperial guy here, they're gonna go and try to stop him, gain intel here. Then they're gonna do a mission here.
Kind of like the first season of Bad Batch.
Right, and it's just building up some experience for the two as, father and son and partners almost, rather than Mando always having like this protective look and like hold over him. He's of course always going to have that, but I would love to see them more as partners in crime almost in this show. Right, and then that leads into this movie where their relationship has built to a new place and they have these experiences. And maybe there's some hints at some greater things happening in the show, and that's what we get. Not some like cliffhanger that leads into the show. Let the show be its own thing, and then the movie stands off by itself. Jay, would you prefer that, or would you rather season 4 build up to this is a culmination event of the Mando show? Like this show and the movie go hand in hand. Like you can't finish the show without immediately watching like the movie.
Yeah, I'd rather it be that, honestly, because to me, when the announcement came, one of the other thoughts I had was, we're actually seeing this series wrap up. That's actually what I was thinking. I was thinking that, okay, this is perhaps the end and the culmination of the Mandalorian and Grogu story. I mean, we don't know that for sure. Of course, it's not. I don't think it's been confirmed when, or even if season 4 is actually going to happen.
Right.
For sure. So it could come before, it could come after. And like you guys said,
all
though,
we've gotten from Lucasfilm was that it's not necessarily top on their minds right now.
Right. Yeah, and then so, I mean, obviously we have to see what the ending is going to be for the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. That's going to heavily affect everything, of course. But I think that, I think season 3, like Brian said earlier, did have a bit of finality to it, right? It felt like it could have just ended there. I almost think that they could just leave our characters there at that point in time right now, and then the next project would be the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. I think
I just still think season 4 is going to happen though. Like I think season 4
right.
is going to happen, and then they're going to build off of that. Like I just think that's in the pipe, like in the cards already. They're going to kick that out there. Like, if that movie comes in 26, that means we'll have no Mandalorian and Grogu on our screens for like, half of 2023, 24, 25, and then it's gonna be like 3 full years since the last time we'll have seen Din and Grogu, and that's assuming that movie is the May movie, which it probably will be, but that's assuming that's the first movie slot, and they make that in time in May 26th. I just can't imagine them going 3 years without putting Mando and Grogu at least out there in some iteration. That's not saying they can't pop up in like Ahsoka season 2 or something for a cameo, or Skeleton Crew. I think they're gonna pop up. I think at least one of them is gonna pop up as Skeleton Crew, but I just can't imagine them, not being there for 3 years.
No, that's a good point. I think that well, so the Mandalorian season 3, ended in last year, 2023. It would be 2026. It'll be like a 3-year period of not seeing them in between those things.
Right.
I don't know. I think that I just feel like if they're like, even in our reporting that Miguel wrote up on the day of, I'll just read the little bit. It said that, Miguel wrote that while Lucasfilm hasn't confirmed that The Mandalorian and Grogu is indeed a big screen version of season 4, the fact that they are going into production this year seems to suggest that, however, Deadline is reporting at present, a 4th season is also in development, though their language use makes it sound like that is subject to change, end quote. So that's from, our own reporting. I just feel like if
you think that's wise though to go 3 years without there's something for building up. You think I disagree with that completely.
Okay. Yeah. And I totally see your thinking, and I totally see your point of view. I just think that if the Mandalorian season 4 was indeed coming, and if it was coming first, I think that they would have announced that as well with this.
That's fair. I think it's just the fact that it's already been dropped in this, like, the line of, whatever, that, oh yeah, Mando season 4, he's working on it, it's happening. And so I think in everyone's mind, they're ready for that season 4. And Grogu's their big moneymaker. Like, Mando and Grogu have been their big moneymakers since The Rise of Skywalker came out. And they're going to go like 3 full years without getting any sort of profit margin from those guys. I just
they're going to go 7 without a movie. So, I mean,
right. But they've had at least Mando and Grogu in that time like, they had a worldwide phenomenon even without a movie, just to take an optimistic perspective. Like, they didn't drop a movie and they have the phenomenon that is The Mandalorian. So there is something like that. And I'm thrilled that we're getting such a long break in between the last movies. I think it's going to build into this new era of Star Wars where we have a 3 or 4 year period with 3 or 4 movies. And I think it's going to be really fun because we have this break. But I think that, there is a lot of credence to what you're saying, Jay, that there is a good chance that season 4 could just be scrapped and adapted into a movie. I just have a hard time thinking they're going to not put out at least maybe like a mini version of something, like, even if it's only 3 or 4 episodes, just something Mando and Grogu in a 3-year gap, because we have, Andor's coming out next year. We have, Acolyte, Skeleton, all that stuff that's this year. But beyond that, we have Ahsoka season 2 that's in development. And we have, what we thought was Mando season 4. Other than that, there's nothing necessarily confirmed at this point. Of course, they could do more seasons of Acolyte, things like that, Skeleton Group, whatever. Brian, what about you? What do you think? That's just, to me, a long gap without Mando and Grogu in our lives, especially if they're wanting to capitalize on this movie. Maybe that's the long game that pays off. Like, people will be craving for more action from these characters. But what do you think? What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know. I think we've still got other content coming out this year. Also, we've still got, Acolyte, like you said. We've got Skeleton Crew coming, if it even comes out. We haven't trailer or anything for it. But, we've got that. And then we've got, Tales of the Jedi. They're talking about spinoffs of Tales of the Jedi now that could be happening. I called that. I think we've got enough content coming out that distance makes the heart fonder, right? So
Mhm.
the longer you go without Mando and Grogu, let's say we do go 3-4 years without him, and then we get this movie, it's gonna make people crave to go see it more and more. Like you said about the films, you know, it's good to have that break from the films so that when we get into this new era of them, it's more fun and everything. Like same thing with these characters, you give them the break for a while and build up that craving for them, the hype for them to come back and eventize it, you know, make it an event. I think that's the smart thing to do, honestly, is to have the gap in there and just kind of pepper it with some other stuff, Bad Batch season 3, Acolyte, you know, stuff like that, and kind of throw it and see what sticks to the wall. And then later on, that's giving you ideas for further down the road of what you could do. Maybe Acolyte's going to be a massive hit, you know,
Right.
and maybe those characters go on and they'd end up doing a film, you know, or something with Darth Plagueis in it. How freaking awesome would that be, you know? So like, it's just, I think at this point they're just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I think with Mando having the gap is actually a good thing.
So I do want to hit this point. They said, how often do TV shows that make the jump to big screen end up being successful? I mean, without a long gap between the show and movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an expert on this at all, but I will say I quickly looked it up. When Star Trek the original series ended, it was like 1969. The movie came out 10 years later, 79. Okay, so but they made several movies, and that's a pretty long gap. But when the Next Generation series ended, that ended in 94, and the movie came out at the end of the year in 94. So it was only a few months, but they made 4 movies from that.
Remember too, though, they still had the original series movies coming out the same time Next Generation was on TV.
Mm-hmm.
They still had it going at the same time. So
yeah, so I mean, that was a show that did it. The only other, I'm sure there's more, but off the top of my head, I know like the Downton Abbey series ended, and then Downton Abbey and Star Wars couldn't be more different from each other. I'm showing you my wide range of interests because I adore that show. And if you like that show and you haven't seen the last movie from a couple of years ago, you need to go watch it. It's just a heart-touching movie. I wrote a review for it on Movie Newsnet. It was just beautiful. But they made 2 feature films a few years after the show came out, and for those audiences and for the budget of those movies, they did quite well. I don't know. We could do like a look and see what the history of shows to movies are like. I would say that Star Trek's a pretty big, franchise, but Star Wars is maybe the biggest franchise there is. So if anyone's going to make that jump really successfully, I would argue it's probably Star Wars.
What was the gap between Firefly and Serenity?
I do not know.
I know because Kersey is a huge Firefly and Serenity fan, and I know I don't think there was that much of a gap in there. Of course, that's a cult classic movie. That's got its very specific fan base. It's not, widely worldwide successful, but
I unfortunately haven't seen Firefly. I know. What's even on actually? What is Firefly on?
God, I have no idea. To be honest, I haven't the slightest clue.
Probably on Max.
We've got it on DVD. Because I know, like, not to get off Star Wars, but on Firefly, Tyler's just like, I can't with these guys. They actually aired Firefly completely backwards on TV. They did the last episode all the way up to the first. And it was weird. But anyway, back to Star Wars. My bad.
Well, what I was gonna say too. Right. So you have Tyler pointed out Downton Abbey. Brian pointed out Firefly. I was gonna point out X-Files. X-Files was another one that did the TV to movie. I unfortunately haven't seen X-Files either. I don't know how long. I was looking that up too.
Right.
Like, what was the gap between the final TV? Well, I mean, the thing about X-Files too is like it's constantly come back. They wrap it up and then they come back, make more. So there's that example, and then there's also Sopranos. It's probably the most recent example with the Many Saints of Newark. The thing about that one though was that came out during the pandemic, and then that's when Max was just saying like, oh, all our movies are going to premiere on Max during that year. Nate is also pointing out the Simpsons movie which made over 500 million.
So
I
when did the Simpsons movie come out? Because the Star Wars does the Mandalorian and Grogu need to run for 30 years before they come out with their movie?
Why not?
To generate
Why not?
that multi-generational fan base like moving forward. That's a good example. I can't think, like, I feel like Star Trek's probably done the best job of generating
Probably, yeah.
movies
I agree.
from these
Yeah.
shows. And so, as always, you have to get my weekly gushing about Star Trek on here. So there you go. And
Friggin' a wolf in sheepskin over there.
so we've talked Mando for 40 minutes. That's obviously the headliner because everyone's doing that. But snuck into that article, and then later, they dropped the sketch, is Ahsoka season 2 officially in development. And of course, we knew that it was a strong likelihood that this was going to happen. But some of the comments recently, and then with Filoni's change, we were talking on here, like, is it possible that, this actually doesn't happen and gets kind of pushed off to the side for some of these other projects now that Filoni is going to be busy with other projects with his new role? They find out that is not the case. I'm sure he's had the Death Star plans for this show cooked up somewhere in a vault for, his entire lifetime of Ahsoka conception. So the sketch itself, I nerded out about it. I just thought it was really cool with them, on the statue of the father pointing and everything. So Ahsoka season 2, it's in development. I would expect we're going to see that before the Mando movie comes out, maybe in 2026. I'm hoping, maybe this is like a early 2026, could be after the Mando movie and to set up the Filoni movie. But that's probably the year we're going to get it, right? Like the end of 2026. Yeah. Would you guys agree with that? Maybe somewhere in that timeline.
Yeah.
What were your initial reactions? Ahsoka season 2, I think we were all pretty positive about the show for the most part. But Brian, what was your initial reaction? Like, yay, like, oh my gosh. Or was it just more like, okay, this can wait. I'm more focused on this.
It was kind of bittersweet. I'm excited for it, but with the whole Ray Stevenson thing and
right.
Balin's skull, which, by the way, I finally tracked down a Balin and Shin Black Series figures. I finally got them. I'm so excited.
Awesome.
But no, that was like my 2 holy grails for the year, and I finally got them. But no, I think I'm excited for that story. I want to know what it's going to be. There's a lot of potential there. You're stuck in a lose-lose situation with the whole Balin skull thing. No matter what you do, it's not going to make everybody happy. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think they're going to recast him, but that's a conversation for another time.
They kind of have to.
They have to.
If they're especially with the sketch of them on the statue, like it would just be weird if
he's going to be central to that
storyline. Yeah.
And so, and I said from the get-go, now that Thrawn is back in the Star Wars galaxy proper, and Ahsoka season 2 would follow the events of whatever happened on Peridia and with everything there. And so I think Balin is going to be key to that story. And that's why I was like, oh man. And Ray Stevenson doesn't even get to like see the love. And I know we talk about it all the time, but he doesn't get to see like how successful that character was and how beloved he was. And now, we're going to have to pass the baton off to somebody else to carry it, across the finish line, which I'm cool. I think the story is bigger than the actor. The character is bigger than the actor. So I want to see what happens with that character. And so Ahsoka season 2, man, sign me up for it. I have a coworker who watched Ahsoka, but he had never seen Clone Wars or Rebels or anything like that. He's in his, I think he said he's in his 50s, but he'd never seen any of that. So he watched Ahsoka. He's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't get it. I'm like, it's because you haven't watched this. Like, and so that was when I started to realize with Ahsoka, it was towards a very niche audience. It was for Star Wars fans. It wasn't for the general public for the most part. It was for fans. And so
for like the
hardcore sweaties.
For the hardcore,
and so
for the deep cuts.
And he kept teasing me. They said they canceled Ahsoka. They canceled Ahsoka. And then I told him yesterday, well, it looks like we're getting Ahsoka season 2. And he's like, thought they canceled it. I'm like, nope, they didn't. They're doing it. So I'm excited for the story. I'm glad they're going to do it on screen instead of like a novel or something like what we've talked about in the past. I'm glad they're doing it this way. I think it deserves to be made.
Jay, do you think, Brian alluded to this, it brings up a great point. Do you think Ahsoka got too in the weeds of you have to have watched the animated shows in order to appreciate it to the way that it needed to be appreciated? Or do you think it was fine for those who hadn't watched the animated shows. They could still at least gather the importance of the storyline and find some enjoyment for themselves. Or does it matter? Do you not even care? Like, there's enough Star Wars for everyone at this point?
No, I think that it honestly did get too tangled up in the weeds. It was funny because I remember comments leading up to that series too, saying that, well, if you haven't seen Rebels and if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, that's fine. Watching it now, you're like, that's a complete lie. But even what was funny about it too was like, even though we did, all of us here have seen Rebels, we've seen the Clone Wars, we've even read a lot of the books. Even though there was all of that, it still felt like there was some gaps in that story that weren't really explained or explored. It's the whole thing with Ahsoka and Sabine, and Ahsoka apparently did train Sabine at some point in time, but we didn't actually see that. I think that with Ahsoka, like it unfortunately did get caught up in the weeds, and like Brian pointed out, there were a lot of people who haven't seen these shows that were completely lost. Part of that, I think, is their own fault, where it's like Lucasfilm should have just said, hey, please just watch this first. That level of transparency, I feel like, would have at least benefited the show,
or at least a
little
certain
bit.
like set of episodes, like the essential episodes leading up to it. Yeah.
Even
But
after,
I don't know. I disagree. I want to push back real quick.
Sure. Go ahead.
Do you? I don't think so. I watched the show with like myself and one of my friends who have seen everything ever made of Star Wars, and then there was two of my friends who had never watched an episode of Rebels, like Clone Wars, really in their entire lives. I felt like they did the show, like maybe it was skewed a little bit more towards the animation audiences. Like I agree, it got maybe a little bit, but I don't think it should have detracted from anyone's stuff, because every single fan had no idea what had really taken place between Ahsoka and Sabine during that. It wasn't something that any Star Wars fans could have gatekeeping knowledge over and keep that. No one knew where Ezra and Thrawn were. They executed that to where you knew that Ezra was important to the main characters, and that's what really matters, is he's important to them. So he should be important to us. To me, that made sense. And then you see Thrawn, and I don't know anything. If you don't know anything about Thrawn, they say Imperial, Grand Admiral. You see him walk down with these, the Night Sisters and the story. You just know this guy is bad news. And I don't think that they executed like Thrawn's prowess very well in those final episodes. Yeah. But I think that's coming like later, obviously.
Right? Yeah.
Sure.
But I feel like I don't understand some of the pushback on, man, you just really don't know what's going on sometimes if you aren't watching this stuff, because I didn't know what was going on because they didn't tell us anything. And I thought that was a good job. I had problems with how they handled some of the exposition in the show, but it wasn't from too much in the weeds. Like maybe those characters mean more to me because I've seen those episodes. And that's part of the problem. But it wasn't like, oh, I have this prior knowledge of having seen these, and that prepares me for this. I don't know.
It's not so much knowing what's going on. It's more of it feeling special.
Right.
Like
I was gonna say that too.
It's the emotional aspect of it where people who haven't watched the animated shows don't know these characters. They just, oh, who's the green Twi'lek chick? Oh, okay, it's Harrison Dula. Who is she? And then they really didn't even mention who she was or what her position was in the New Republic, because we just knew from Rebels where she ended up in the epilogue and everything like that. And they name dropped Kanan Jarrus, like everybody's supposed to just know who he is. Oh, his master is Kanan Jarrus. Well, everybody who watched the show understands who that is, and we know the story. But to see these characters like Chopper in the first couple of episodes, when he's like digging through everything for the tracking device, he's like, rah, 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 and he's just like being sassy. Everybody's like, okay, cool droid. But people who watched Rebels is like, that's totally Chopper. That's perfectly. I mean, I had a tear in my eye. Like that was awesome to see Chopper back.
Is it still special though? To like, you don't know who Ahsoka is. You don't know who Ahsoka is, sure. But think about someone who didn't know that Anakin had like an apprentice, and you're watching this show, and you're like getting to know who Ahsoka is. And then you find out when she's fighting Anakin Skywalker, oh my gosh, that's like her master. She finds that out. Like, I don't remember, it was earlier in the show, I'm sure, like when you talk about Anakin, but like you're finding out, oh my gosh, that's Anakin's apprentice, former apprentice, and you're learning some of the stories you go. It to me, like that's a different kind of special and shock. Like you're finding something out that we, taking it for granted for several years as Ahsoka fans, but like they're learning this for the first time. Or yes, name dropping Kanan Jarrus, like that was something for the Rebels people, and yes, I think that it was special to those people. But at that moment, if you haven't familiar with that, you're like, oh, this kid's dad was a Jedi. This kid might be special, like, without having to know all of that. I mean, it's like this kid is a Jedi. I feel like there's people that went to watch sequel Star Wars movies and aren't really familiar with other Star Wars movies, but then they find out that Ben's like Kylo Ren is, Leia and
grandson,
and they're like, okay, that kid is special.
Let me push back with one example. Darth Maul in Solo, in the Solo film. People who'd only ever watched the movies, Darth Maul pops up at the end of Solo and they're like, what, didn't he get cut in half? Didn't he die in episode 1? Didn't he die like 3 movies ago? Like, what the hell? Why is he back? Well, you have to watch this cartoon to know how he came back and, his whole backstory and everything. Well, okay. But for us who had seen Clone Wars and
I had not seen Clone Wars when Solo came out yet. I had not seen it yet.
You hadn't?
I did not watch Clone Wars until.
But did you know Maul was still alive though?
I did not know.
You didn't know.
I did not know. I did not become into animated Star Wars yet until after that movie got me into animated Star Wars, because I was like, oh, so Darth Maul, it threw me off guard and I was completely surprised by it. And I did not know that Darth Maul was still alive. And it didn't make me question the Phantom Menace. I was just like, I have to figure out how this guy's alive. It made me twice as excited to like,
go back.
And then one of my friends was like, it was so cool seeing Darth Maul. And I was like, I agree, but I don't know why, for the reason that you know why. And so I went and like, I'm on Wikipedia, like after the movie, like reading about Darth Maul. And so, and I was super excited because then it was like the next day, like the next week, I started watching Clone Wars because I wanted to see what this Darth Maul stuff was about. So it's almost like I've kind of been there from a standpoint of like not understanding.
I don't know, the whole fact that they did the whole epilogue from Rebels in live action, that entire scene almost shot for shot. That was for the people who watched Rebels. That was for them and everything. Right. So I just feel like the Star Wars is great. Like everybody loves Star Wars. And I should say everybody, but people watch Star Wars.
They should.
They love it. They should. But there's certain moments that happen in Star Wars that are just special. And it's
Absolutely.
Moments that stick with people, the emotion behind it. Like for me, Puppet Yoda popping up in Last Jedi. Say what you will about Last Jedi, but the fact that they brought back the puppet for Yoda, and it was just like I still tear up when I see Puppet Yoda, and
it's amazing
and seeing him playful again, not like the authority figure from the prequels, but that playful, it was nice to see that again. So with Ahsoka, but I think that's an aspect too you got to look at, is how special it was for the comeback, especially considering how long that cliffhanger was between the end of Rebels and Ahsoka. So I don't know. I
agree. Like I think that, but I just think that there is different levels of like what is special, and something I think that they failed at this at times, but at other times they were able to deliver special moments for some fans that were still special for other people, just in like a different way. And I think like the World Between Worlds is a great example for Rebels fans. This was like a payoff of like 6 years in the making of seeing the World Between Worlds, and then Hayden Christensen being on screen. And for people who aren't familiar at all with the World Between Worlds, it's like this, I'm experiencing something brand new in Star Wars, and I'm seeing Darth Vader back on my screen again to help me understand what this place is. So I thought it was like a perfect blend of, something that we know, something that people don't know, and meshing them together to help people understand. I just think that it's similar to, there are aspects of like the Mandalorian even that hint at things going on in the galaxy that some people might be familiar with or catch, but they're not like integral to the story. So Jay, we'll like kind of throw this back to you, and like we'll give you like what's your like word on this like whole thing, and then we can talk maybe just a little bit about like what we're hoping from season 2, like now that it's like in development, what does that look like, and then we'll get out of here.
No, I totally agree that I think that I mean that's the hard thing about creating stuff for Star Wars nowadays is there's so much lore, there's so much backstory, and everyone is on different levels. I think that I think Ahsoka, your assessment actually, Tyler, is right, and I agree with in that it offered something for everyone, whether you're on whether you've been following the series since forever, or whether you've watched the animation or not. I think that obviously it could have been better, and they could have maybe worked worked in the audiences who haven't seen Rebels in like a little bit
Right.
more,
It was just a
in
writer's
different
room
way.
thing. Like they didn't. It was for me. Like it's like there wasn't a problem with maybe it feeling too much for some people. It did
Right.
skew the direction. I will agree with Brian. It skewed that direction,
Right.
and I think, but that was mostly a problem of like they just didn't write out their like exposition content super well, and some of the moments. I just thought there were some gaps there. But that goes to the greater problem of them just Filoni needing like a bigger writer's room. To me, like that to me is the problem.
Yeah, actually, and we've talked about it a lot. Is hey, we need like if Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau can have a writer's room where it's not just them working on this stuff, it would actually help out a lot. As far as stuff for season 2, I want to see. Well, I mean, it's already been hinted at, and it's in the teaser image, the sketch. It was
Right.
with Balin Skull. It's the Mortis gods. I want to see more of that, and one thing I really did enjoy about the first season of Ahsoka was this expansion of the galaxy. Literally, we're going out into a different galaxy. Let's have more of that. Let's have more of an expansion on the world and on this universe. Let's go and delve into some of the history of like Darth Plagueis stuff, even like and I think that's honestly the direction we're going, is into the history of it all, of like the Mortis gods and even the formation of the Force and what that entails. There's a lot you can dive into from all
Can
of
we
that, and even
explore
from
it
like
without a barren wasteland surrounding it that is
right,
very
yeah,
boring to look at after a while?
and let's get off the volume. I think
That's not
Oh
going away.
yeah.
That's not going away.
It's not going anywhere, but man,
I agree with both of you. Like, yes, we need to get off of it, and no, it's not going anywhere. I completely agree with both of you.
I'm fine with I'm fine with the volume. I think that I think we've gotten so accustomed to looking at it, we can see it and spot it a little bit easier than we could at first. I think it's just a matter of how do you mix in those shots with some of your real ones. Sometimes I feel like it's like just so it's almost volumified in my brain when I see that. And I can't even see the screen anymore because it makes sense. I've heard from people though that have gotten the 4K Mando discs that it looks way better on that because it's an actual physical media that they created, designed for that, and it looks way better. You can't notice that kind of stuff nearly as much. I don't know if that is true or not. This is like my last question. And I'll throw this to Brian here before we get into just some final comments. Do you think Filoni, obviously he's going to be generating the story arc for this season? Of course he is. But do you think with his new role as Chief Creative Officer that he's not necessarily going to be taking over like solely the writing job for this? Or could his new role and offer in a chance for some other writers to come in and he kind of gives the vision for the story, vision for the season, and it offers an opportunity for some other people to come in and maybe patch some of the holes that might exist?
His new role is he's just an advisor. He's basically, instead of them, bringing George Lucas to set and letting them see what's going on and him kind of give a couple tidbits here and there about, some tips here and there. That's what Dave Filoni is for now. They've literally retired George Lucas from there. from their contact list. Now it's Dave Filoni. I
It's
guarantee
gotta be a
that's what
little.
they've
It's
done.
gotta be a little more than that,
Nah,
though. Like just
I don't think
popping in
so.
every once in a while. There has to be like he has to be on set sometimes, saying like, well, maybe it should feel like a certain way. Like especially now that he's directing a movie. I just wonder, does he have so many hats now? Because
I don't think so. I think because the only
he's got his
things
own
he's
movie.
working on, but his movie is going to be that's going to be the last film that comes out now, right? Out of all these 4, that's the last one.
No, probably
I
not.
thought they said that was going to be because
I
what did I
think
see somewhere that
Mando and Ray will
Mando,
probably come out
Ray,
first,
and then
I would probably
and then I
Filoni.
saw Dawn of the Jedi, and then the Heir to the Empire is what I was.
Where did you see that?
I don't remember where I saw it. I knew you were going to ask me that too, and I should have said.
I don't think they'll wait because that means like this thing would come out. His movie would come out like 2030.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, no, not necessarily. Maybe 2028.
They're gonna drag this out for 5
But
more
if he's
years.
working on another season of Ahsoka, and then he starts working on the next film, that's why I said earlier, the timing is kind of making a little more sense in my head now, because if Favreau's doing this movie, and then we've got the Rey film coming out at the same time, you've got Mangold working on his. That's going to give Filoni enough time to get his season 2 of Ahsoka out, and maybe season 4 of Mando, and then we're going to go into that Heir to the Empire movie. I think that lines up almost. I mean, if that movie is coming out in 2028, and he starts working on it in 2026, that's in 2 years. That gives him enough time to get another season of Ahsoka out, another season of Mando. That's why I said I think that timing matches up perfectly for that being the final movie. He's working on one project at a time. I don't think he's got enough. I don't think he's got too many hats on. I think he's doing.
He's got the Ahsoka. There's a lot that he's got to work on with that movie. I guarantee you, he's going to be involved in some of the discussions about this Rey movie that's getting started as well. Like he's going to be, and so I can't imagine that not taking up some of his time. And I think this is important too. We don't know what's in the workings for Disney Plus, like outside of obviously Ahsoka season 2 and maybe Mando season 4, but if Mando season 4 is now the movie, then Andor is going to be wrapped up here soon, and he's not really involved with that. So the direction of Disney Plus, like they still have to churn out content, for that, and Star Wars is be a big part of that. I guess we don't know like necessarily the direction that could go, and I wonder if he's involved in that process as well.
Is he working on the Tales of the Jedi stuff, or is that?
I think he is,
because I know he pulled back from Bad Batch. I know that.
He did that for season 1. I know he was kind of like the visioneer for season 1. I would assume he still is for season 2. Granted, they could do more of that. But Jay, what about you? What are your like final thoughts on that? Dave Filoni's new role, writer's room, etc.
I think that it's probably going to be the same approach he did for Ahsoka season 1. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of change, and if you look at Ahsoka season 1, he wrote all the episodes. I don't know. He might still write all the episodes, because I think he probably did write season 2 while he was working on season 1. Yeah, exactly. So I think he's still probably going to be the writer. He still probably has all the story written out. He's probably not going to direct a whole lot. It's probably just going to be like season 1 again, where it's just he wrote it all out. He directed a few episodes, but it's, as far as where that show goes, everything else, people are going to step in to do everything else for him.
Well, it will certainly be a fun time in Star Wars. We spent this entire show, New Year, talking about a Star Wars movie that is in the works and another season of a show that is going to have characters in it that I am sure are headlining characters for another movie that will be coming out a couple years after that show. So it's interesting. We're going to have basically 2 feature films come out that pretty much everything in those movies is centered around shows that are out on Disney Plus. I think that's fascinating. So we have 2 movies we're talking about. We have Skeleton Crew coming up this year. The Acolytes coming up this year. I'm expecting a Bad Batch trailer anytime this month. I think it's coming out this month or early February. I will tell you this: Bad Batch trailer will come before Valentine's Day. It has to. It has to. So
is this going to be your next big prediction that comes true, Tyler?
That's my big prediction. It's going to happen in the next 5 weeks. I'm telling you.
You're 2 for 2 right now. You're
2 for 2. We're going to keep it going. It's going to be a good time. Brian, close us out. Where can we find you? let's wrap this baby up tonight.
You guys can look for my podcast, the Star Wars Canon Podcast, at the YouTube channel, the same name. Definitely go check that out. And you guys can check out the website that I've put together, StarWarsCanon.net. It's still under a little bit of construction, but we're getting it there. It's looking good, man. I actually got some messages through the website over the last couple of weeks saying that people have been checking it out and looking forward to seeing it when it's finished up and looking forward to using it. So there's a lot of upgrades coming for it. I'm going to end up putting a lot of hyperlinks in it. So I mean, not only are you going to have like the timeline of all this canon stuff, but everything's going to have a link where you can go to purchase at like every format of it possible. So like, you know, if you want the hardback, get the hardback. You want the paperback, you want the ebook, you want the Audible, like it's all going to be there. So I'm just trying to get the base website put together first, and then we'll start putting the bells and whistles on it. So definitely go check it out, StarWarsCanon.net. Hope you guys check it out and enjoy it.
That's awesome. Jay, what about you?
Yeah, feel free to check out my writing on StarWarsNewsNet.com. I have some new editorials coming out. This year's being the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace. We talked about that last week. I have some work commemorating that really important dates and that important anniversary, so I'm really excited about that. You can also find me on utini.com as a writer there as well. And I have advertised this before, but I too am also working on a passion project of mine, video game channel. And I'll be happy to announce more of that on the show in the next coming weeks. So
that's exciting. I'm not a video game guy, but Jay, I'm sure that you're going to be the greatest video game like channel person ever. I'm not a video game guy. I don't know like anything about that sphere. The only thing I really know about video games is like sports games, and when I end up playing the Star Wars games like a year or two after they come out, and then one of my friends is super into it. And we have like a Friday tradition where every Friday he sends like one of his best kills from Battlefront 2 that week or something. Like he'll just drop it in there or something like that. But I'm not really a video game guy, but I just think it's fascinating how many like ways that we have to do Star Wars and other gaming stuff nowadays. It's really cool. You can find me on Twitter at TyBrad5. Please follow us at Star Wars Newsnet wherever you are on social media. We drop literally everything for Star Wars news, movie news, book news, comic news. Like it's always all there. I'm really excited. I should be getting Defy the Storm and Escape from Valo in the mail this week. And shouts to Nate for getting me those copies in the mail. I'm super excited. I'm telling you, if I get them by tomorrow, that's probably all I'm going to do this weekend is just read. I'll probably finish Escape from Valo. I'll just sit down and read it Saturday. Like I'll just do nothing but do that. So I'll be having reviews for that come out soon. Working on some YouTube videos as well. We are out of here. Brian, close us out, sir.
Until next week, guys. May the Force be with you.